Hey everyone, so if you do not know me, I am Brittany. I am a teacher at Dance Xtreme. I wanted to quickly create a tutorial because I know that there were a lot of questions as far as the competition makeup goes. I know we have a lot of new families and just people who didn't get to see really up close during the makeup demo. So I am going to create the competition makeup on myself in a very detailed tutorial coming up next. I am also going to list all of the products that I use down below if you are interested. Certain things are just super important. You do want to make sure that your child is always wearing lashes, foundation, blush. This way you want to make sure the lipstick is always on, because on stage those bright lights, they're just going to wash you or your child out. So all of these steps are just super important. I did everything that I would do pretty much on myself back in the day, or on a child if I was doing their competition makeup. If you have any questions, you can call or text me. You can leave comments below. I will definitely get back to you guys as quickly as I can. So without further ado, let's get right into it, and I'll see you guys at the end. Okay, so it is super important to start off with a moisturizer as your base. It's just going to help the makeup stay all day, and it's going to help in a smoother application process. Whatever moisturizer you use, it's not really a huge deal. You can use any moisturizer, whatever works best for you or your child's skin. So I'm just going to put a little bit on my hand, warm it up on the back of my fingers, and apply it to my face. It's important that you press underneath the eyes, this way it doesn't get all dry underneath there. So just the way I like to do things are brows, eyes, face, lips. So first I'm going to start with my brows. I'm going to use a brow powder just because I find it easiest and quickest to use. It doesn't leave too much of a mess. So with the spoolie end of my brush, I'm just going to brush up and out. Now with a brow powder, I'm using the Benefit ones. Drugstores have a million different brow powders. It's super easy to use. Just put a little bit on the back of your brush. I like to tap it off a little bit and then just fill in any sparse areas and just follow right along the brow, the natural brow arch. Here, I'll zoom in slightly so you can see a little bit better. And if you find that the brows are a little too dark, all you have to do is brush it out and it will disperse the product. Same thing on the other side. I like to back brush the brows a little bit just because I find that it gives a little bit more of a feathered look. But these are like minor details that don't matter too much. Now I'm going to pick up on a concealer just to even out the skin tone on my eyes. Any concealer is fine. I like my concealer to usually be about a shade or two lighter than my natural skin color. So I'm just going to take a little bit off of the little doe foot. And I'm using a concealer brush for this. I'm going to start it on my lids. This way I don't have too much product up by my brows. And then as you get closer to the brows and there's less product on your brush, you can just go right up against the edge of the line or your brows just to clean them up a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now this is just a concealer brush. Any concealer brush will do. Synthetic brushes are better for concealers and liquid/cream products. And then I'm just going to take a damp beauty blender. It's super important if you're using a sponge that you squeeze it underneath the sink a couple times and then just squeeze it into like a towel just to get the excess water out, but you do want it to be damp, this way it can pick up product. And I am just going to pounce it on my lids just to blend and get rid of any creasing. Next, I'm going to take a translucent powder. So you don't have to use this translucent powder. This one's just the one that I always use. This is the Laura Mercier one. Maybelline has a good translucent powder if you're looking for a loose powder. Really, any natural powder or any powder you're going to use on your face, excuse me, any powder is going to be fine. You just don't want to put your eyeshadow on top of a liquid or cream concealer. So I'm just going to set my lid quickly. Okay, so now my lids are ready for my eyeshadow application. I am going to first pick up on the second to darkest shade. I will pop the shades that I'm using as I'm using them up in this little corner. This way you guys can follow along. So I'm just going to take that shade on a fluffy brush. It's important that the brush you use for this is fluffy. This way it just blends out the way it's supposed to blend out. These products are made to be built, so you don't need to, I just put a little bit of product on my brush, but I don't need this much, so I'm going to tap it off, and I'm going to put my brush on the outer corner of my eye, and I'm going to start with circular motions inwards, and this is going right from the corner of my eye to like where my crease is. So circular motions inwards, and then as I see the product starting to disperse, I'm going to bring that and bring it into my crease with windshield wiper motions. So back and forth, back and forth. I'm just going to build it until I find that it's as dark as I want it to be. But you don't want to put on too much product at first. It's easier to add than take away. If you just stick with the windshield wiper and circular motions in and out, you will get a nice seamless blend. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side until it matches this side. I like to do one eye at a time. Just a tip to avoid fights and irritations in the morning on competition days. If your brushes are shampooed or cleaned beforehand, they're not going to be as rough. I use baby shampoo to clean my brushes, and then you just let them dry overnight out on the edge of like a counter. So if my hand's the counter, I leave it like that. This way it can dry evenly around, and it'll just make your life so much easier with your kids. This way they're not crying that you're hurting them or anything like that. Next, I'm going to move on to the more shimmery shade. Again, the shade will be over here. I'm going to move on to the more shimmery shade, and this is going to go on the light part of my lid that's right here that I haven't touched yet. So I am going to take a tighter haired brush, and it's flatter. This will work better to pack on the color. And I like to just spray my brush. You can run it under water and make sure it's just damp, but I just spray my brush a little bit. This is going to keep the eyeshadow more pigmented, and I am just going to press it onto my eye. And I'm keeping it right in that empty area. So as you can see, I'm keeping it on the inner 2/3. I'm not going to that outer third quite yet because I'm going to use that darker shade there. Same thing on the other side. Okay, now I am going to take the darkest shade on a small little angled brush. I like this brush to be a little bit fluffy, but it's definitely small. And I am going to pick up on the darkest shade, and I am going to focus this color right on my outer corners. So I start right on the outer corner and kind of go up against my lash line and bring it up slightly into the crease. Again, I'm just using tiny, tiny, tiny little windshield wiper motions, and I'm keeping this on the outer third of my eye. And as you can see, I didn't bring this powder in past the inner half of my eye. I left the inner half alone. This way you don't want to close off the eyes too much. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to go back in with no added product in that first brush and just blend where the shades meet. Next, I'm going to take that lightest shade and I'm going to put it right at the high point of my brows. So it's like right inside that arch. And then I'm also going to pop it right on my inner corner. Now I'm going to move on to the eyeliner, which I just want to tightly rim my lash line. So a trick is that if you just have your daughter look down, you can go right up against the lash line. It kind of opens up her eyes, as opposed to if she's closed and squinting, you're going to get ridges and you're not going to get a smooth, even line. I'm just taking a felt tip liner. All of the drugstore brands have them. And I'm looking down and going right up against my lash line. Now I'm just going to take a makeup remover wipe. Any makeup remover wipe will do. And just in case anything fell on your face, you're just going to want to wipe it up and clean that. And you can also clean up the edges. So I just wrap it around my finger and wipe. So for me, I'm going to use the Ardell Wispies in black. You always want to use black lashes for competition. I find it easier to apply them when you use a tweezer. So I always peel them off from the outer corner, right at the root of the lash, and peel them off. Before you apply them, you are going to want to measure them. So how you measure them is you have your child open your eyes and look down and line up the inner side of the lash. Again, there's no glue on here yet, with the inner portions of her eyes, and then the outer part of the lash with the outer parts of her eyes. Now I could probably cut off this last little piece. Most lashes might have to be trimmed. So the key to applying false lashes is you want to let the glue dry about 90%. I use the Duo glue because it has a little brush on the end of it, and it just makes the application a lot easier. So I just go right up against the top of the lash, let it dry 90%. It usually takes about 30 to 45 seconds. Now, again, you're going to look down. Push down in the center. Secure the outer corner. And then secure the inner corner. Now, as long as the inner corner, the center, and the outer corner are secured, these lashes are not going anywhere, I promise. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, one thing to be careful of is that if your child or you have long lower lashes, sometimes the lower lashes just get stuck in the corner, but all you have to do is take like a spoolie and brush to disconnect. But definitely check out those inner corners before moving on. Next, I'm just going to take a mascara to marry my false and real lashes together. It's also going to help keep the false lashes up because it adds a little bit more strength to your natural lashes underneath. So again, when applying mascara, it's a lot easier when you're applying it on someone else if you have them open their eyes and look down, and you kind of put your finger here and just brush up. This way you can get the root of the lash. You don't need to go all the way to the top of it, but just the root of the lash to add more security. And then you want to put your finger there, this way you don't get the mascara all over the lash. It also helps pick up the lash and you can get right up against the root. Okay, so first I'm just going to moisturize my lips. First I'm going to moisturize my lips just to keep them nice and moisturized while I apply my foundation. It's going to help when I apply my lipstick later. First, I'm going to take my foundation. If you want to learn how to shade match, just if you put it along your jawline, whichever one disappears between your face and your neck is the one for you. But right now my face is a little bit paler than the rest of my body, so I'm going to just match it to my shoulders. I'm going to use a damp beauty blender. Again, I'm just spraying it to make sure it's nice and damp. And I put a little bit of foundation on the back of my hand, applied it to the beauty blender, and just kind of dispersed it out on my face and just started blending. So you want to push, you don't really want to rub with this. Pushing will get the best application for you. You don't really want to put on a thick layer. A thin layer is fine. You just want it to even out your skin tone. Plus, it's going to be harder to touch up throughout the day if you put on a lot of face makeup. It's easier when you just have a nice thin layer. I always get my ears just because on stage and in cameras your ears do tend to be a little bit more red. So just making sure everything is even. And just be careful with the neck. Don't put too much product on the neck. I'm just, with no added product, just blending it out just so that it's seamless. But a lot of these costumes, you don't want to get anything on the neck part of it. Okay, so now that my foundation's done, I am going to go back in with my concealer. I'm going to use the same brush from before and the same concealer from before that I used on my lids. And again, a little product goes a long way. I like to put it on the back of my hand first, just so I feel like it's easier to manipulate. I apply it on the brush and just in downward strokes underneath my eyes. I'm going to go up against the side of my nose and down. This is just going to conceal any darkness under your eyes. It'll brighten up the inner portions of your face, give a little bit more shape to the face. Again, I'm going in downward strokes because you don't want to put it up into the pore, you just want to cover right over it. And then we tend to get a little red around our nose, so I go right around the nose, right around the nose, right on my chin, and then right in the center of my brows and a little bit in my forehead. And then I go down the bridge of my nose. And then I'm going to go back in with that damp beauty blender. And again, I am just pushing. Perfect. So now that it's all blended out, you are going to set it with a powder because you don't want to put blush and powders, like colored powders, on top of your liquid or cream. So I am going to take a translucent powder or any powder that's the shade of my face and just dust it right over. Okay, so after my foundation, I am going to set underneath my eyes. So you want to make sure that all of this is blended out. This way you don't set any makeup in the creases. And with that same brush from earlier, I'm just going to set underneath my eyes. And then with a more fluffy brush, I'm just going to push and set around my face. It doesn't have to be a lot. Next, I am going to just warm up the perimeters of my face and create a little bit more of definition. This way you can see the faces move on stage. I'm going to take a angled brush, and with a bronzer, I like to use a matte bronzer, nothing too shiny. I'm going to put a little bit on the edge of my brush, tap it off, starting from where you feel your cheekbone, just kind of brush it in. And then you could also press right up against the cheekbone. This way you know that you're not going too far up or too far down. You do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to start right up against my cheekbone and brush in. And then again, I'm just going to press right up against it. And then I'm going to do the same thing around the perimeters of my face, right in the hairline. I'm just going to press. Just because those lights are really bright and you don't want it to wash you out too much. But you want it to be seamless. I shouldn't see where the bronzer starts and stops. You want it all to just be blended together. And then you can go right up with no added product up against the jawline. Now I am going to move on to my blush. So as far as blush goes, I just have a little palette here. You're going to want something that's bright enough and pink enough that's going to put color into your face. You don't want to look one shade. You do want to put life into your face with all those bright lights. So I am going to pick up on this really pink shade over here. I'm just going to tap it onto my brush. Again, I'm going to tap it off before applying it to my face. I'm going to smile, and then right on my cheekbones, I'm just going to brush downwards. Well, not on my cheekbones, right on the apples of my cheeks, sorry. And then just to diffuse the edges, I'm going to go back in with that brush that I used for the translucent powder with no added product. And I'm just going to blend around it. Now quickly, I'm just going to go right back in underneath my eyes just to bring a little bit of definition underneath. I'm going to take a really flat brush, tight-haired, this way the product doesn't go all over the place. I'm going to go back in with that first shade that I used, the tan shade. Again, tap it off, especially because now we have face makeup on, so you don't want to ruin it underneath. Have them look up and just and just dust right underneath your eyes. And then with the same brush, I'm going to pick up on the darkest shade. Again, just a tiny bit, tap it off, and keep this on the outer third of my eye. Next, I am going to line my lips. I don't have the actual lipstick shade that you guys will be using, so I'm just kind of working with what I have around me right now. Honestly, I would probably use a more red lip liner if I were to use a lip liner. I find it easiest to apply the lipstick with a lip brush, so I'm just trying to mix shades so I can get a shade that's pretty close to what you guys will be using. And then if you have a setting spray, I just like to spray myself at the end. This will make anything that looks a little too powdery more like skin, and just keep it kind of locked all day long. So this is the final look. I hope it wasn't that hard or intimidating for you guys. Like I said earlier, I will list all of the products that I use down below. You already have the eyeshadow palette, you already have the lipstick. As far as blushes go, just something that shows up on your skin tone is all I ask. Yeah, if you have any questions, like I said earlier, feel free to call or text me. I'll be at the studio and the dance competitions, so I will definitely see you guys around. Feel free to come up and ask questions, but I just might not be available to be doing actual makeup. So that's it, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.